Story 1. I had a cat that he pretended not to like. He used to talk about how he just wasn't a cat person. But one day, when he didn't realize I was home, I heard him singing a little song to my cat about how pretty she was and how cute her little paws were. That was the moment I knew he was, in fact, a cat person. I love that this story delights so many people. The reason that moment meant so much to me was that his silly, loving, open self shined through, and that's the man I wanted to marry. No regrets. Our cat passed away at age 19 earlier this year. I had adopted her when she was 6, and my husband was beside himself. They were such a cute team. She was even in our pre-wedding portraits. After she passed, he was the one who said the house felt empty without a cat, and he led the charge to find our next kitty. Story 2. He stayed with me through months of health issues. I was diagnosed with a brain tumor a month into dating. He is still here, but the tumor is not. Edit. You were all so kind and supportive. Thank you for your support. He is truly a fantastic human, and I am so grateful for him. Story 3. We had one date which was disastrous for many reasons. I assumed that date was the last and didn't expect to see him again. A few days later, I received a call at work. They said, "Your husband is on the phone." He immediately came to mind. He apologized profusely and said he didn't know why he asked for his wife. I guess we knew. We have been married for 25 years. Story 4. It was when we moved in together. When we were dating, I was renting a condominium, and the owner decided to sell, which meant I needed a new place to live. She asked, "Why don't you just move in with me?" So I did. After about a week, I knew I wanted to marry her. I can't pinpoint any one thing in particular. I just knew it was right. We were married less than a year later. She passed away in June of 2023, and I miss her every day. Story 5. Not married yet, but engaged and been together for 12 years. I knew he was the one when, about 6 months in, he noticed my anxiety spike at a party, and I started feeling overwhelmed. He pretended to be really tired and asked if I was ready to head home to bed. We stopped to get a snack, and as we walked back to his place, it started to snow. He looked at me and said, "This is way better than any party." And that was it. I knew. Story 6. When he blurted out that he loved me for the first time during a quick lunch date because we both found out we hated eggnog, he tried to play it off as not a big deal. I didn't trust my own judgment back then, but my gut already said he was the one. We've been together for 11 years, married for 5.5 years, and we have an almost 1-year-old baby. Story 7. 3 days into working for her, we collaborated at Merry-Go-Round, an 80s and 90s clothing store. She was strikingly beautiful and intelligent. At 19, she was self-sufficient, having lived on her own since age 16. As the store manager, she could run the operation smoothly. She dressed with classy confidence yet was easy to approach and very elegant. Within 2 weeks, we fell head over heels in love, and now, 31 years later, we are the only ones left from our friend group who are still married. Story 8. I have always had insecurities about my body, and when my husband and I were together, at the time he was just my boyfriend, I always wanted to have sex with the lights off, completely dark. One day, he convinced me to turn on the lights but dimmed, not fully bright. I agreed, and my anxiety was through the roof. I was convinced he would see all of me fully for the first time and be repulsed. However, he kissed every part of me in such a loving way, kissed me on the lips periodically, and told me I was beautiful, even with all my stretch marks and scars, all my rolls and pudgy bits. I felt very special and loved in that moment, and I actually relaxed completely. Not that I didn't feel loved before, but this moment was different. I knew then that if he could make me feel this special and relaxed while I was insecure, he must really love me, and I decided then that I would marry him. Just a month later, he actually proposed to me. In just a few days, we will be celebrating 16 years together. Story 9. We adopted a 6-month-old Basset mix from Craigslist. She exhibited several problematic behaviors, such as peeing when someone entered the house, and was very pushy about wanting to lick your face. One day, my boyfriend came home, and she peed on the rug, which made him very frustrated. I told him he needed to make a decision that day, Either we take her back or he figures out how to train her to fit into our lives. I made it clear that I would not accept him getting angry at her. He became quiet and thought for a moment before saying, "I want to keep her." It was as if a switch flipped. He spent the next few days on YouTube and online researching dog training techniques. We developed a plan to take her outside to the front yard every time we got home. We also went through crate training and other training methods. He never got mad at her again. She became very attached to him, snuggling as his little spoon in bed every night, and she absolutely adored him. Watching him go through this process and become a better person for her was the moment I realized I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. Story 10. Something just clicked with him when we first met. No tension, no awkwardness. It was all easy. On our third date, he played a Johnny Mathis song while wearing short pajama pants that didn't fit him during our drive to drop me off at my house. I'm not sure what it was, but I just knew it was forever. Story 11. You both can be playful in front of each other, and that is key to me. Being playful is not the same as being emotionally immature. There is a massive difference. Story 12. I was going on a business trip for a week and jokingly mentioned that my cat would be lonely while I was gone, but she should be fine since I have an auto feeder. My then girlfriend, now wife, offered to drive about an hour to take me to the airport and bring my cat home with her. That's it. No dinner, no entertainment, no real time together, just about 3 hours of driving because she wanted to make things better for me in a way I hadn't even considered. I haven't had many helpful people in my life. I'm usually the one offering help. I knew right then that I had to commit to this relationship. We got married a month ago. Story 13. I discovered I have a genetic chronic illness about a year into our relationship. It was a big surprise and not something I was prepared for. We experienced some difficulties for a couple of years after the diagnosis, with many misunderstandings and disagreements. Eventually, we sought counseling together to work through our issues, and we both also engaged in individual therapy. Seeing how much we grew together and the effort he put in to become a better partner meant the world to me. I knew we would last in the long run when we graduated from couples therapy together. We have been happy together since, and we communicate and understand each other well. It has been 7 years now, and I have undergone 10 surgeries, some minor and a few very major. He has been my rock and truly my best friend. Story 14. Cliché, but the moment we made eye contact, a bell went off in my head. I had never believed in that sort of thing before. Story 15. It was before we actually started dating, when we were just talking and feeling things out. I had just been through a traumatic, life-changing event that left me with injuries and anxiety, but I was on my own dealing with it. We were acquainted through work, but nothing more than that. He stepped up and started helping me. He came over to clean my apartment when I wasn't physically able to. He checked in on me every day. But the one time that really stood out was the night he brought me dinner from his favorite Thai place. It still melts my heart to think about. He brought the food over and ended up staying until almost 2 a.m. We just talked about life and laughed a lot. It was the happiest I had ever been. He stayed even though he had to work a shift starting at 8 a.m. I can't describe the intense feeling I had after he left, but I knew he was the one. We have been married for 8 years and have 2 beautiful children together. Story 16. I experienced severe food poisoning, the worst I've ever felt in my life. He quietly helped me in the shower, cleaned the floors and bathroom, and bought me new pajamas. We hadn't been together very long, and despite being a goof, he never made jokes to lighten the mood, both at the moment and afterward. He understood how sick I was and how humiliating the whole experience felt for me. Story 17. First date. His passion for comic books stood out to me. We talked for hours about our likes and dislikes, characters, story arcs, artists, and writers. I realized he is just as much of a nerd as I am, and I never wanted to leave his side. We are happily married now with a storage unit full of comics. He is my best friend. Story 18. Oh boy, we were friends for years. I could list many moments. We both knew very quickly, once we started dating, that we were meant for each other. One thing I think of is the first night we spent together. We were both a little nervous. After he gave me a massage, instead of turning it into something else, He grabbed me, and we cuddled. My head fit perfectly on his chest. He sighed and said, "Wow, we really fit perfectly. I've never been comfortable cuddling, but I don't want this to end." He literally took the words out of my mouth. We still cuddle every day. We still fit perfectly. We still complete each other's sentences and read each other's thoughts. Story 19. When my wife entered my computer room looking frustrated, it was because the cable company would not allow her to pay the bill on my account, claiming she was not listed as an authorized user or the spouse of the account holder. Although she was listed as an authorized user, it was overlooked. She hung up on them and told me, "We are getting married. I am tired of dealing with these companies that won't let me pay the bills we share. We have now been married for 10 years, and she no longer has issues with them preventing her from paying the bills." Story 20. We left his house to go out, and he told his dog in a totally normal voice, "We're going out now, we will be back soon." There was no embarrassment about talking to his dog, as if it were a person in front of his new girlfriend. I knew then that he was a keeper. Story 21. According to my now husband, it was the first morning after what was supposed to be just a one-night or friends with benefits situation. I made him homemade biscuits with bacon thyme gravy, all from scratch, for breakfast. He thought to himself how he wanted meals like that more often and decided he wanted to stick around. I took a bit longer. For me, it was when he was genuinely happy for me and meant every word when he congratulated me on getting a B in calculus, a class he had failed which forced him to change majors. Up until that point, I hadn't had any partners be happy for me doing better than them at something non-domestic, nor had they truly encouraged my interests or passions. He was the first to do those things repeatedly and continues to do that to this day. Story 22. On our first date, she drove. I was looking through her CDs, as was common at the time, and found Tenacious D. I put it in the CD player and we did some karaoke in the car throughout the whole album. Story 23. We had been dating for about a year when I went to Europe for my postdoctoral research. She decided to visit me. I should point out that we are not American. I went to the airport to pick her up. We were both a little nervous since she doesn't speak English and had never been abroad before. She had never experienced winter either, and it was January without a jacket. I waited for her to appear in the arrivals area. Passengers from her flight were coming out, but still I waited. Just when I was about to panic, she finally showed up. She explained everything. As she was leaving the plane, she tried to converse with a lady from Colombia on the same flight, even though she doesn't speak Spanish. Later, while retrieving her suitcase, she found that same lady, who was distressed because her luggage was lost. My girlfriend decided to stay and help this complete stranger until her luggage problem was resolved. That's just how she is. When she told me that, something inside me recognized that she was the one, and she has been for the past 20 years. Story 24. We were at dinner with his family, and he has a younger brother who is on the spectrum. His brother ordered something unusual to show off, while my husband quietly ordered something he knew his brother would actually like. When his brother eventually melted down, my husband could offer to trade. My husband claimed he had really wanted to try the unusual dish to let his brother save face. I knew right then that I wanted to marry someone who understood and cared about their family to that extent. Story 25. I had a good feeling when he drove me to work after my car died following the first night I stayed over. He did a lot of research to try to fix my car, even though he was not a car enthusiast. The moment I realized I'm marrying this man was our first Thanksgiving as a couple. My mom and I have a complicated relationship. She used to wait until we were alone to make passive-aggressive comments about my body and other cruel remarks that would decimate my self-esteem. No one ever believed me, and even my husband was initially taken in by her public persona. I had talked about her tendencies before, so he pretended to leave a room while positioning himself to eavesdrop. When my mom told me that he would leave me because I brought nothing to the table, he barged in, threw an arm around me, kissed my cheek, and with the most innocent expression said, "What was that, Mom? I love this man." My mom has gotten a lot less difficult, mostly because she has a son-in-law who will definitely call her out. Story 26. He told me to set boundaries with my brother, who struggles with alcoholism and drug addiction. Or he would leave me because he couldn't stand to watch me endure endless abuse and sabotage. My head and heart immediately knew I loved him even more than I loved my family. I realized we had something worth fighting for. I also realized that if he believed I was worthy of safety and peace, I could finally believe the same. Story 27. I had a guy's week plan to ride our quads, camp, and relax. I met her after the plans were made. She helped me get a new exhaust by taking a picture of my quad and showing it to the guy at the shop. She paid for our day passes at the park, went to the grocery store and packed snacks, food, and drinks for us. Then she told me not to call or text her and to enjoy myself. That was 11 years ago this September. I called her every night. Story 28. We were in a long-distance relationship. When we met for the first time after 8 months of talking, they knew I was allergic to flowers, so they brought me broccoli stalks wrapped in ribbon, my favorite vegetable. It was the most thoughtful gesture anyone had ever done for me. Someone had actually gone out of their way to ensure I felt special and welcome. 6 years later, it remains the best decision I have ever made. Story 29. I don't know if I had a specific moment like that, but it was clear we were building towards something great with no major concerns and nothing we couldn't manage. He is wonderful and the first partner I had who I didn't feel anxious about actually committing to. Other partners had mentioned marriage in the past, but it never made me feel positive about that potential future. It just raised questions and uncertainties. With my now husband, we talked about the future, and it felt natural and safe. We also aligned on all the important matters: finances, religion, children, lifestyle, hobbies, travel, free time, and future plans. Story 30. When my bride-to-be ran as fast as she could, leaving her parents behind, down the aisle to stand next to me at the altar, I was still madly in love 39 years later. Story 31. He got LASIK 3 weeks after we met, and I picked him up from his appointment. I was new to the area and made a wrong turn, which made me flustered. I told him I had made the wrong turn, but he didn't get upset or yell at me. He simply said, "It's okay. I know you'll figure it out. Just get me home safe." I realized he was different. Story 32. I got engaged yesterday, which is crazy to say after 12 years together, where neither of us had the desire to get married. Mutually contractless. 2 years ago, I told him I was officially not against the idea of marriage. The panic in his face was hilarious. I explained it wasn't a deal breaker, but he had done something that made me swoon in the most meaningful way. At the time, I was working from home in a call center position. I had just logged out to have a delightful panic attack in the living room when he texted to ask how my day was going. I didn't want to worry him, so I responded like normal and said it was going all right. He immediately called. I don't know how, but he knew something was wrong. He always does. He's the definition of an empath, and it's a superpower. Not just for me, he'll text or call friends out of nowhere just to check on them, and way too often he catches them mid-breakdown. He's too good. The decision to be engaged was also quite casual and highlights why he's the one. I have a complicated family, and I only have my mom and brother left that I speak to. There was an incident 2 weeks ago that sent me into a downward spiral, making me realize that cutting them both from my life is the only way forward without constantly being hurt. So yesterday, when he got home, I told him I wanted to change my last name. He asked to what, which earned him some major side eye as I replied, "What do you think? So, does that mean we have to get married?" He asked. I told him we didn't have to, though I wasn't against the idea. He said all right in the most casual tone. When I asked if he was serious, he said yes. He had been thinking about it and had come around to the idea. We've known for years that we're endgame. I hugged him, though I can't kiss him right now because I have a nasty cough, which I also find hilarious, and told him I'd very much like to call him my husband. "Ew," he replied as he turned back to making dinner. "God, I love this man. We're also keeping it a secret in real life. Very few people are going to know, so far just my best friend and her husband, along with his sister. Most people will be unaware until after it happens. We're planning a very small and private ceremony at the courthouse on a day when we'll have plans to go to his parents for dinner afterward, at which point his lovely mother's head is going to explode. I cannot wait to marry into his family. They've always treated me like I was one of them, I'm the luckiest lady in the world. Story 33. After dating and living together for 3 years, I tried to think about my future, and I could not imagine a future without her in it. Over 25 years later, the best part of our day is getting to see each other. Story 34. When he willingly fished out a trapped menstrual cup in the middle of his period, this man will be my husband. I must propose to him as soon as possible. Story 35. I was at my parents' house, 300 miles away, and had an emergency. He came down immediately. I didn't ask him to, tell him to, or expect him to. He showed up and took care of me. This man never calls in sick, rarely takes time off for vacations, and is always punctual. He hates missing work, especially since they really needed him at that time. But it didn't matter. He told his boss he was leaving and came to me. Work-life balance is much better now. He has a different job, but I'll never forget him showing up for me that day. Story 36. When we were dating, I spent many weekend nights at his place because it was bigger. Sunday night would come, and I wasn't too upset about heading home and starting my week. However, on a particular Sunday, the thought of leaving for the week affected me so much that it felt unusual. In those moments, I realized that I wanted to marry him more than anything. Story 37. We met online in 1995. After a few chats, we had an 11-hour phone call that lasted all night. The next day, he drove to his parents' house and told them he had found the girl he was going to marry. We will celebrate 30 years together in October. Story 38. We had been chatting online for a long time, but I knew there was a possibility we might not have chemistry in person. So when we finally met up and discovered we had a strong attraction, I knew we would be a long-term couple. We have been married for 13 years now. Story 39. The first night I met him, he was a carpenter and played guitar. He complimented my Toyota Solara and said he had always wanted one. Nobody ever acknowledges how cool those cars are and how reliable they are. I knew at that moment he was the one. A few months into dating, his engine blew. I gave him the Solara for free and asked only that he look on Craigslist for a new convertible for me to buy. Story 40. We met at my workplace. I was a cashier at the local convenience store, and he came in daily for coffee. We would always chat, which quickly expanded to online conversations as well. About a month after meeting him, I asked a more knowledgeable coworker about him. There was no ring, no mention of a significant other, but he had a 10-year-old daughter who was obviously his. She told me he had just moved back to the area to help out at home while his mother was sick and that the child was from a previous relationship. I pondered this for a moment, looked her in the eye and said, I am going to marry him one day. We started dating within the year, and 7 years to the day of meeting, he proposed. We have been married for 6 years, with a 23-year-old and a 4-year-old. He has seen me through the best of times and the worst of times, and I strive to do the same for him. It's a simple life, but it is so good. Story 41. I knew her for 2 years while we dated other people. I always thought she was cool, smart, and beautiful. When we were both single, I took a chance. It felt like a long shot, especially since we were finishing school in different states. I got her to come visit me one weekend. My jaw dropped when I saw her clear security. We hugged, and it felt natural, like hugging a girlfriend I had been dating for months, if not years. We hooked up that weekend, and it felt the same way, just natural. We really fell in love with each other that weekend. I had 2 long-term college girlfriends up to that point, and for some reason, this just felt more right than those ever did. That weekend, I remember thinking I would probably be a happy guy if we could make it as a couple until graduation long distance and then live the rest of our lives together. That's exactly what happened. Story 42. A week after our first date, we got a wild idea and went on a 12-day road trip. We essentially lived in my pickup truck. There were no awkward moments, no arguments, only good times. We have been together for almost 10 years and married for 9. We still go on road trips frequently. Story 43. She was the first person with whom I felt I could be myself. Our first date lasted half the day, and we just seemed to click. She worked at a salt therapy place and encouraged me to pay for a membership. So here we are in one of the salt rooms, and without any provocation, she cuddled up next to me. I think I nearly cried. We would video chat until the early morning hours or until we were completely sleep deprived. I told myself that I should hold off on telling her, I love you, but I couldn't hold it back. In the most romantic way possible, I told her, I love you. Supposedly, she reciprocated, but I didn't catch it. So I was hoping that she didn't hear it or would forget about it until I could say it more properly. A couple of days later, as I was driving to pick her up for a date, she told me, I love you. Our anniversary cake read, I love you. We've been married for almost 3 years, and we're expecting. Story 44. I had been divorced for 3 years and was dating for friendship and casual fun. I matched with a girl and thought it was a mistake on her part, an accidental swipe. We chatted for a couple of days before going on a low-key date with appetizers and drinks. When we locked eyes, it felt like we had known each other for decades. From that moment on, we were inseparable. I wasn't a believer in previous lives, but I am now. I felt as if I had known her before we met. After being married for almost 3 years, our relationship is functional and fantastic. We were meant to find each other after having prior marriages with other people. Story 45. I want to thank everyone for sharing these lovely, sometimes heartbreaking, but truly beautiful memories. They provide a person with a glimmer of hope and light in dark times. I love you all for being yourselves. May your days be long and joyful, full of life, love, and laughter. Story 46. Not married yet, but engaged for almost a year now, so hopefully soon. I am the one putting it off, not him. It's a long-distance relationship, and I have an elderly cat I'm worried about moving from Canada to France, but he is very understanding. We were casually dating online. Honestly, neither of us was looking for anything serious, but our personalities meshed so well that we fell in love. He was telling me a story about the Battle of Tsushima. We are both history enthusiasts. I am more interested in royal lineage and leaders of countries, while he focuses on wars, so we overlap in interests at times. The way he told the story, he pulled up a map and made sound effects. He was so passionate that I remember thinking how amazing it would be to see him tell stories to our future children. Poor guy had no idea that while he was recounting that battle, I was planning our future, completely smitten by him. Story 47. I knew from the moment we got pregnant for the first time how excited and involved he was throughout the entire ordeal. Shortly after, when the miscarriage occurred, he was just as devastated and heartbroken as I was, and incredibly supportive of me. Then, 6 months later, when it happened again a second time, I've heard stories about pregnancy loss breaking couples apart, but losing our babies made us infinitely stronger and brought us closer together. I married that man, and it has been the best decision I've ever made. Story 48. We were kayaking one day when we played hooky from work about 5 months into our relationship. Our dog fell out of the boat, and my girlfriend said, "He's under the boat." But I heard it as if he was trapped underneath. I jumped in to save my dog, and by the time I came back up from the water, my girlfriend had already pulled him out and looked at me like I had lost my mind. As an admittedly dramatic individual who isn't calm under pressure, I knew I had found my person. Story 49. I was in a nightclub with a friend. I am straight and not looking to meet anyone. I saw a girl on the dance floor with red hair. I turned to my friend, pointed her out, and said I am going to spend the rest of my life with that girl. I walked over and said hello. We moved in together that night. That was 30 years ago. Story 50. I went through a difficult breakup with an abusive ex and was scared to be home by myself. When he offered to come and stay a few nights on my couch as a friend, I knew I couldn't let him go. 7 years later, I am engaged as of February. I am thankful every day that things worked out the way they did. Story 51. We had been dating for 6 months, and we were attendants at our best friend's wedding. I developed a severe headache during the service and had to pretend to be fine at the reception to avoid drawing attention to myself. We rode separately back to the groom's parents' house, and I felt like my head was going to split open. It was quite late, so we all went to bed as soon as we arrived. I finally felt like I could relax and started sobbing because the pain was so intense. I tried to keep it quiet, but my boyfriend heard me and came to check on me. I explained what was happening, and he gently asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He understood why I hadn't made a big deal at the wedding and wanted to know why I didn't mention it when we got back. Because I didn't want to bother anyone. It was true. In my house growing up, we kept our pain and sadness to ourselves. It wasn't a rule, we just never shared. I didn't think he would want to know. He held me and said, "I never want you to cry alone." That was it. We will have been married 20 years this month. He still doesn't want me to cry alone. Story 52. I was on a work trip in Rome with her and her team. I had known her for months and had my eye on her, but I didn't know her well. We were waiting for a bus and chatting about life and work in general. While she was talking, I remember thinking, "Oh, there you are. I've been looking for you my whole life and finally found you." That's when I knew I would marry her. My next thought was, be cool. Don't mess this up. 20 years and 3 kids later, she's still my favorite person. Story 53. I knew him for a while and we were good friends before we started dating. We played video games online and participated in Dungeons and Dragons together in a group. He was always respectful and a nice friend to hang out with. I was engaged to someone else for a long time and was unhappy in that relationship. I realized that if you are engaged to someone for 4 years with no further progress, and it's not for financial reasons, then it's probably time to move on, especially after a decade together. There were other issues, but ultimately it just wasn't happening, so I ended the relationship. My ex married someone else about 8 or 9 months later. I moved out, found an apartment, settled in, and felt pretty good. Later, I hung out with my previous friend. It sparked something, and we decided to give dating a try. About a year after that, my dad had a devastating stroke and was hospitalized. I moved back home to take care of him, and as soon as my boyfriend found out something was wrong, even before we knew it was a stroke, he was already in his car on his way to me. During those months, he took care of me. I was inconsolable many days, as my dad was my best friend. It was a really hard few months while my dad was recovering. Unfortunately, my dad's body couldn't handle the damage from the stroke, and he passed away after 4 months. I couldn't function after that. My boyfriend continued to cook, clean, and help me through my sorrowful moments. He took me on drives at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I can't express how much he did to ensure I survived. He then asked me to marry him once things settled down, and we eloped on Halloween. His idea because it is my favorite holiday. He remains caring and kind, getting me through my hard days and encouraging me in the things I want to do. He's my best friend. I think I knew I wanted to marry him before my dad got sick, but I definitely knew when he drove 3 hours to be with me when all he had was, "I think something is wrong with my dad." That feeling solidified when I saw how he handled everything during such a horrific time of crisis. He was calm even though I knew he was stressed too. I really don't know if I would have gotten through that year without him, and I'm glad I will be spending the rest of my years with him. Story 54. I went out with my future wife a few times, and I could not get her out of my head. I couldn't sleep well at night. One day, while driving to work, "I've just seen a face" by the Beatles came on the radio. Completely summed up how I was feeling, and that memory is burned into my brain. I told myself then and there that I would do everything to make it work with her. A couple of weeks later, her apartment lease was ending, and she was going to move back in with her parents since she was still in college. I wrote her a letter and asked her to move in with me. She did, and we are now approaching 20 years of marriage. Story 55. First date. She ticked all the boxes. A traditional Christian girl who loved kids and wanted her own. She was cute but shy, a little goofy, and highly intelligent. I had been through a difficult divorce about a year before meeting her, so I knew exactly what would not work for me. We have been together for 18 years, and every day I feel like I won the lottery. Story 56. He was so different from my former type. He was older, stable, had a great family and career, no children, and had just bought himself a nice new condominium after divorcing 5 years earlier. But he was also kind, handsome, funny, and a great conversationalist. I had never met someone I felt so comfortable being around. There is a lot of truth to the saying, when you know, you know. But my age and experience weren't allowing me to fully embrace that vibe just yet. even though I knew he was quite taken with me. I liked him a lot, but wasn't sure about getting serious, mostly because I was still a bit immature at that point. However, every little test I presented to him, he passed with flying colors. After 3 months of casual dating, he expressed a desire to take me on a romantic trip to one of his favorite cities, San Francisco. I agreed to go because either way, it was a free vacation. The moment we arrived at the hotel suite, he was ready to get intimate. Felt a bit rushed, and I almost left that night because I wasn't feeling it yet. The same doubts crept in the next day. On the third day, he rented a convertible and drove us to wine country, and all my doubts magically faded. I jokingly say it took a few bottles of Napa Valley Cabernet to wake me up and help me fall madly in love. I will never forget being a little tipsy on our long drive back into the city later that day, taking in the beauty around us as the sun was setting. As I looked at him driving, he suddenly took my hand. A sense of peace washed over me as I thought, I like this. I like him. I really do think I could be happy with this person forever. That was in July 2007, and we've been happily inseparable ever since. Story 57. Honestly, I knew I wanted to marry him when we were still in high school. I made that choice again at 18 when we got officially engaged. I made it again at 20 when we got married. I choose that commitment every day since. Story 58. I am not married but engaged. I have been with my fiancé and future husband for 10 years. When we first started talking, I experienced terrible anxiety and would have panic attacks at restaurants. I do not know why. I think it was due to the many people, smells, and noises around me. We did not go to restaurants for about a year until I worked through my anxiety. During that time, we always ate in and cooked for birthdays. He was happy to do it and never complained. He also looked past all the mistakes of my past and never brought them up. That is when I knew he was the one. Today, he still supports me in everything I do. I love this man and will spend forever with him. Story 59. We were young. We had moved away from home to start our own life together. We came back a year later for a holiday and saw all of our friends at the bars. They hadn't changed. They were still drinking excessively, and there was still drama. I knew then that I was happy with her, focusing on our own lives. It's been 24 years. Story 60. I went to high school with her and got in touch 10 years later. I was single and checking my email from a friend's house. She sent me a picture from her first day as a doctor, the first I had seen of her in a decade, and my heart skipped a beat. My friend looked over my shoulder and said, "Oh my God, who is that?" I replied, "She and I dated in high school." He responded, "Dude, you dated her? And she's a doctor? And she's still talking to you? And you're single? Don't ever complain to me about not getting a date again. This is all on you." And he was right. Story 61. As a young graduate student, I was filling out my federal tax forms. After finishing my taxes, I announced that I owed $400. She gave me a withering look, took the tax papers, and left the room. 30 minutes later, she returned the tax form and told me that I was getting a refund of $250. Story 62. My sister has learning disabilities and epilepsy. She lives alone with 24/7 support and has a fulfilling life. During the COVID-19 pandemic, my mother called to tell me that my sister was in the hospital after having a seizure. This was not unusual for her and she was fine. Her support team panicked and called an ambulance. We did not want her in the hospital during COVID-19, as it could be dangerous for her. I was on the phone with my mother, who was panicking and unable to leave work to assist my sister. I reassured her, saying it was okay and that I would go. While still receiving details of the conversation, my girlfriend at the time was already standing up, putting on her shoes and getting ready to drive me. Without knowing the full context, she was prepared to take me wherever I needed to go. We had only been together for a couple of months, but she ended up becoming my wife. Story 63. Less than 6 months into our relationship, I was at his mother's house with him when he made a plate of food. Just as he was ready to eat, our niece, who was 5 at the time, walked in and said she was hungry. He immediately put his plate in front of her and got her some milk. He then made himself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This is something that would never have happened in my family. Girls meant very little, so if I was young and hungry, that was just my problem. I knew right then and there he was the one for me. This was 20 years ago, and now our child is getting married herself. Story 64. We met online. It started as two people who lived about 7 hours apart in a social game. At first, we chatted a lot, discovering many things in common. She was funny, very smart, kind, creative, and seemed to possess all the qualities I was looking for in a relationship. I finally drove down to see her on a date months later, and it was instant chemistry. There was physical attraction, a desire to be together, and pure enjoyment of her company. We have been married since 2011 and have a 9-year-old daughter together. She still tells me I am a perfect husband, and I likewise think she is the perfect wife. Story 65. My boyfriend of 3 months was making silly jokes while we prepared dinner together and enjoyed homemade cocktails. We both enjoy cooking and mixing. I rolled my eyes and pretended to be annoyed while we laughed, even though we both knew I found him hilarious. Then he casually remarked that our future grandchildren would wonder how I put up with him. He didn't bat an eye, just kept stirring whatever was on the stove. He didn't realize he had assumed out loud that we'd be together long enough to share not only children but also moments with our grandchildren. As soon as he said it, I realized I wanted it to come true. I wanted him to be the father of my children and for us to grow old together. I didn't point out his remark until we were already married 2 years later. We have to pause our cooking and drinking for now because we just had our first baby. One step closer to sharing his goofy jokes with our grandchildren. Story 66. As soon as the flailing stopped and I could take the pillow off her late husband, I realized I was just here to feel less lonely. Story 67. I was staying at his place while we were dating, and we made a meal together in the kitchen. It felt so comfortable and safe that I thought to myself, I could do this for the rest of my life. A few weeks later, we were out in public holding hands. Someone asked, "Are you married?" And we both replied, "Not yet." At the same time. Story 68. About 6 months into dating, after a Halloween party, we went back to his place to crash. I was so tipsy and tired that I wanted to go straight to bed. He made sure I brushed my teeth before falling asleep. It sounds like such a small thing, but I remember thinking, wow, he cares about my teeth. Story 69. When we moved in together after 3 months of dating, we met in late 2019, and I moved into his apartment in March 2020 due to COVID-19. I thought this could make or break us. He had bought me a desk and chair since I was working from home, and he was so sweet. We also thought it would only be for a matter of weeks. It was the best decision we made. We haven't been apart since. He feels like home. He's my safe place, and that's how I knew then and know now. Story 70. When my ex-wife broke up with me after 7.5 years, I thought I would never want to get married again. Shortly afterwards, I met a girl. We dated but only saw each other a few times a month because we lived 60 kilometers apart. She had no car, and I was sharing one with my ex, but our chemistry was beyond words. About 6 months in, she made me a meal for my birthday, and after dessert, we danced in the living room. All I could think about during those 3 or 4 minutes was dancing with her to that song, surrounded by our friends and family at our wedding. 3.5 years later, that's exactly what happened. We're together for 11 years now, stronger and more in love than ever, and grateful every single day that we somehow managed to find each other through all the madness that life threw our way. Story 71. He never made me feel like my neurodivergent brain was bad or that my anxiety spirals were a bother. He made me feel safe and found ways to ease the burden and simply be there for me. 14 years and 3 children later, we're still together. I love him so much. Story 72. In the first few weeks of dating, he said, "Your entire life, you've focused on others. It's time for you to focus on yourself. And I just hope I can be along for the ride to remind you when you forget that you deserve the world and it's time you experience it." We just celebrated our 6-month wedding anniversary last month while exchanging vows in front of family and friends. Story 73. Our second first date. We went on 5 dates, and I felt that it was not the right time for us yet. 8 months later, he reached out. A non-date turned into a date, and I knew in my heart that it was the right moment. Sometimes you just know. We dated for a year and a half before getting engaged, taking our time no matter how I felt. Story 74. He survived my parents trying to separate us multiple times over the years and never gave up. He always had a smile and a joke to help me through it all. Story 75. I have been with my wife for 14 years, but we have been married for 2.5 years. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her from the first week. She wholly accepted me for who I am and stood by my side through my struggles with addiction and poor choices. We are not just a couple. We are partners in life, lovers, and best friends. She has made me a better person. Story 76. It was love at first sight. We started talking and didn't stop for 28 hours. I knew that day I had met the person I would spend the rest of my life with. We lived hundreds of miles apart, but I packed up my life and moved in on the second date. It has been almost 19 years, and I'm still sure. Story 77. I had something very valuable to me that was left out. Once I revealed what it was, she stole my apartment key while I wasn't looking, broke into my apartment while I was out of town, and took my belongings. Then she had it framed and preserved and returned it to me on my birthday, criticizing me for not taking better care of something that mattered so much to me. It is still hanging in our office. Story 78. Early in our dating, we went to a music festival together. Our accommodations, which my friend arranged, were terrible. We stayed in a tiny one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco with 3 cats. She was allergic to cats but didn't mention it at the time. We had nowhere to sleep except on the floor in the living room. It was a challenging experience, yet she didn't complain once. We had a great time at the festival and have been married for 10 years as of this May. When you know. Story 79. My husband had a Great Dane when we were dating who was 13 years old. She had terrible arthritis but was still healthy and happy. We weren't engaged or even living together, but at night, whenever we were at his place, he would help her up on the couch, lay her on his lap, and massage her joints while watching a movie. I was sold after that. If that's not love, I don't know what is. We have been married for almost 20 years. Story 80. My husband said he knew as he walked out the door on our first date, telling the cat, "Wish me luck. I'm going to meet your new stepmom." I realized a few months later when we went through a challenging situation and came out stronger. Though it was very difficult, we didn't give up on each other. Story 81. I am getting married next month, but I have known my fiancé for well over a decade. We started as friends with benefits about 5 years ago. During the second time we were together, I was straddling his lap on the couch while we were ignoring Punisher Season 2 on the TV. We were kissing when he stopped and said, "Is it okay if I tell you that I love you?" I have been in a perpetual state of melting since then. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.